All right, hello again. We're back for Chapter 14, a light bulb, a pencil sharpener, a coffee pot, and a sack of potatoes in Louis Sachar's Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger. All right. Galileo was a scientist, said Mrs. Drizzle. He was born in Italy in 1564 and died in 1642. He was the first person to use a telescope to study the stars, and he also helped figure out the laws of gravity. Oh, I know about gravity, said Joe. Mrs. Jules pushed a computer out a window. It fell a lot faster than a pencil. No, I don't think so, said Mrs. Drizzle. Galileo proved that all objects fall at the same speed. He conducted a famous experiment. He dropped lots of different objects off the Leaning Tower of Pisa. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is in Italy and was built in... Todd raised his hand. You're getting a little boring, he said. Oh my goodness, am I? Asked Mrs. Drizzle. Rondi, Leslie, Paul, and Calvin nodded their heads. Oh, I'm sorry, said Mrs. Drizzle. She thought a moment. I know, she exclaimed. Let's do the experiment here. The children cheered. They loved experiments. Mrs. Drizzle rubbed her hands together. Let's see. We'll need a coffee pot, a pencil sharpener, a light bulb, and, she thought for a moment, something heavy. An elephant is heavy, said Benjamin. There are no elephants in Wayside School, said Mrs. Drizzle. Everyone laughed. How about a sack of potatoes? Asked Ron. I bet Miss Mush has one. Go see, said Mrs. Drizzle. There's a coffee pot down in the office, said Stephen. Go get it, said Mrs. Drizzle. The missing coffee pot will come back in a later chapter also, so store that in the back of your brain. If I had a screwdriver, I could get the pencil sharpener off the wall, said Eric Fry. I've got a screwdriver, said Jenny. Can we use a fluorescent light bulb? Asked Beebe. She looked up at the ceiling. I guess so, said Mrs. Drizzle. How do I get it? Asked Beebe. You're the scientist, said Mrs. Drizzle. You figure it out. Beebe put a chair on top of her desk and stood on it. She still couldn't reach the ceiling. Hey, Benjamin. Hey, Benjamin, let me have your chair. She put Benjamin's chair on top of hers, but still wasn't tall enough to reach it. Calvin dumped the waste paper basket onto the floor. Try this, he said. Beebe turned the trash can upside down and put it on top of Benjamin's chair. Then she climbed on top, but she still couldn't quite reach. Leslie brought the class dictionary. Jenny and Dana donated their math books. Sherry grabbed Mrs. Drizzle's old blue notebook. Put that down, yelled Mrs. Drizzle. Right now! Sherry dropped the notebook. Mrs. Drizzle's kindly old face had suddenly turned mean. Don't ever touch that again, Mrs. Drizzle ordered. Sherry returned, trembling, to her seat. Everyone was staring at Mrs. Drizzle. She smiled sweetly. Go back to what you were doing, she said. Jason threw Beebe his lunchbox. She set it on top of the books and climbed on top. Standing on her tippy toes, she was able to pull the cover off the fluorescent light. She grabbed the light just as the pile collapsed beneath her. She fell to the ground, triumphantly holding the unbroken light bulb above her head. Ron returned with a sack of potatoes from Miss Mush. Stephen returned with Mr. Kidswatter's coffee pot. Eric Fry unscrewed the pencil sharpener from the wall. Mrs. Drizzle wrote coffee pot, sack of potatoes, pencil sharpener, and light bulb on the blackboard. We're going to drop all 4 objects out the window at the same time, she said. How many people think the coffee pot will hit the ground first? Is there coffee in it? Asked John. It's about half full, Stephen reported. 8 kids thought the coffee pot would hit the ground first. 16 thought the sack of potatoes would hit the ground first. 3 thought the light bulb would be first. Only Terrence thought the pencil sharpener would hit first. Jason, Joe, Jenny, John, and Joy were the judges. Mrs. Drizzle sent them outside. Stephen held the coffee pot out the window. Beebe held the light bulb out another. Eric Fry held the pencil sharpener out another, and Ron held out the sack of potatoes. Everyone crowded around to watch. With everyone on the same side of the classroom, the school leaned a little bit, just like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. On your mark, get set, let go, said Mrs. Drizzle. The objects fell through the air and smashed against the pavement. A short while later, the judges returned. Their clothes were splattered with coffee. Jenny had bits of potato in her hair. Was it the pencil sharpener first? Asked Terrence. It happened so fast, said Joe. They all hit about the same time. But the coffee pot made the coolest explosion, said Jason. I think the light bulb hit the ground last, said John. Well, that's possible, said Mrs. Drizzle. Gravity causes all objects to fall at the same rate, but the air slows them down. That's called air resistance, and that's good. Otherwise, raindrops would kill us. Air resistance slows things down a little bit, but it has a greater effect on very light objects, such as paper. Of course, the size of the paper is important too. A crumpled up piece of paper falls faster than... You're getting boring again, said Mac. Mrs. Drizzle stopped talking. Now we need a new pencil sharpener, said Leslie. Paul licked her ear. You remember way back in the story with a disappointing ending, Dr. Pickle had hypnotized Paul to want to eat Leslie's ears every time that she said the word pencil, but then Leslie never said pencil in the whole chapter. So now here we are, 8 chapters further up. She finally said the word pencil sharpener, and that made Paul lick her ears. So let me look how far back that actually was. That was chapter 5, so we're 9 chapters later. Leslie finally has said the word pencil. So the missing coffee pot is going to come around. We're going to find out where Leslie has heard Dee Dee, has heard the name Mrs. Drizzle. And we're going to leave off at chapter 15, An Elephant in Wayside School. One thing I wanted to cover on here. You notice how Todd, he always gets in trouble with Mrs. Jules, usually for no reason, and gets his name on the word, gets his name under the word discipline, and then usually he ends up going home early on the kindergarten bus. So you'll notice he was the first one who mentioned to Mrs. Drizzle that she was getting a little boring, and was happy that he didn't get in trouble for that. That'll wind around back again in a later chapter as well. So, if you look on the cover of this version of the book, and this was a different one than I've had in the past, you've got them actually dropping the glass out the window, and here's Dr. Pickle with his swinging pickle. I don't know how well you can see that. There's the mysterious cow still in Wayside School, and you've got Lewis cleaning things up, and there's the computer that got thrown out the window on there. There's one other picture, but I don't want to give away a secret from another chapter, so I won't mention that one. All right, so that's the end of this today. We'll pick it up tomorrow. Have a great day.